Welcome, listeners, to Through the Sightglass, the podcast that dives deep into the fascinating world of craft beer and celebrates the incredible individuals who shape its vibrant landscape. Join us today on a journey where we explore the nuances of this amazing industry and the remarkable people who contribute to its richness and diversity. And today we're sitting down with Trevor over at Garde Brewing. Trevor, thank you for giving us time, letting us talk to you. We're excited.
Thanks for including us in this, and very happy to spend the time with you.
Yes, thank you.
So, as always, we like to start out kind of where do you call hometown? Where'd you grow up?
Well, hometown is in Tillamook, Oregon, where we're sitting right now. This is, cheese and coastal dairy country. But I grew up in Petersburg, Alaska, actually, a small town on Mitkoff Island in southeast.
Wow.
I came from I was the fourth generation of a fishing family in that area and grew up doing that. Went to work with family on boats full-time in the summertime, starting at about 8 years old, and then filling in, doing a lot of network and other associated work for the industry as I could during the wintertime and the colder months.
Yeah, kind of being brought up in the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you guys fish for?
Most of my work was for salmon.
Okay.
There was some associated other things, but salmon is the predominant fishery in that area through the summer months when I wasn't in school, so that's what we did. That helped out a lot because it helped pay for a big chunk of my college education.
Oh, wonderful. Did you have siblings to share in the workload with?
Yeah, my brother Brandon is a year older than me, also moved to Oregon. He's actually the CEO for PacTech. If you drink a lot of canned beer, they have the can toppers. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, he's living down in June. We both kind of roundaboutly found our way into the industry in different facets.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you influenced him, or?
No, man, he's way more successful than me. He doesn't need my influence at all. No, and I'm sure, I know my grandmother was saddened when we both decided that we weren't going to continue that, multi-generational fishing tradition. I suspect that both my parents probably were totally happy with that decision because there are good things about that. And it's a great way to make a living. It's hardly a great way to make a life, I think, though.
Yeah, it's hard, especially the season. From what I remember, runs about spring into fall or spring into winter. It's usually 6 to 8 months, and it's super hard work.
Yeah, well, we typically did about 2.5 to 3 months during the summertime for salmon. That was kind of our peak season in Alaska, and if we did Bristol Bay, a different location, oftentimes you'd tack on another few weeks for that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But I remember the last year I did it, I don't think we, other than stopping off long enough to get some groceries, that we actually saw dry land for the last 3 to 4 weeks of the season.
That's wild.
That's wild.
Yeah, not super fun.
Yeah.
Found some good skills to, I'm sure, help you progress in life later on as well.
I learned how to live off of peanut butter and rice.
There you go. There you go. Peanut butter and
Financial
rice.
survival. That's perfect.
Is your family still in the Alaska area?
Yeah, both my parents are still up there. They actually just retired recently.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah, we're super stoked. So I have them as well as some other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc.
Very nice, very nice.
Do they all approve of your choice into not only just craft beer but spontaneous beer?
Yeah, well, you've had our beer. It is not something that is going to be enjoyed by everybody, and we fully know that. There's no judgment there. There's no wrong in taste. I would guess that the majority of my family, or hell, I know the majority of my family does not really enjoy what we like, even if they're proud of us for making it.
There you go.
My dad is a pretty big fan, though, but also how much of that is because he's my dad?
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I get
Well,
that.
I wouldn't call it obligation, but just being proud of the work. If you were to say, if your family was drinking beer, what is their go-to grab? What would they sag out of the cooler?
Oh, goodness. My brother's an IPA drinker, I think, predominantly. He's enjoyed some of the dry hop beers and collaborations we've done. My dad is less stylistically focused. I think he'll enjoy anything that's well-made.
Okay.
And my mom is a wine drinker. And,
Oh, okay.
that's it.
Yeah.
Fine.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like lots of moms. I remember my mom drinks quite a bit of wine, and my brother works in natural wine. So then he's showing her these natural wines that she enjoys. And then, then I'm like, let me show you spontaneous beer, or even just goza, things like that. And she's still not super into it, but she's like, you use your knowledge. Okay, I can see that this is all paying off. It's not just a hobby.
Yeah, for sure. So how did going from fishing, kind of education, you said you went to college, what was that progression from fishing to after, being with your family?
Yeah, I wish there was a great way to tie this all together and make it make sense as a transition, right? But I don't think it really does. I learned a lot of great lessons growing up in the fishing industry, hard work and just basic technical skills. So that was invaluable. But going to school, I was a Bachelor of Fine Arts, sculpture and painting major, studio art.
Oh, lovely.
And creativity surely plays a role in what we do, right? But it is hardly the directest route towards doing or undertaking an endeavor of this nature.
Yep.
So very cool.
Yep. We can see the artistic in the tap room here, the art pieces and stuff. It feels a little more art, like a gallery more than necessarily a brewery would feel. But it's a good tie between the two in the tap room. So
yeah. Well, we wanted to
see that.
My wife deserves Lindsay, who's she hates it when I say this, but the brains of the operation. She ties us all together.
There you go. Thank you, Lindsay.
But she was spearheaded the development of the tap room when we purchased and renovated this building, so she deserves all the credit there. But we wanted to create a space that was comfortable, but beautiful too. I think there's a level of comfort that is inherent in the best tap rooms. That's something that's usually nailed in a good space. I think some of the stylistic elements maybe are a secondary thought to beer.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell that.
I also feel too with a well curated and designed tap room, there's almost reverence about it. It shows that it's much more than just a visual focal point for your brand. I feel like there is a lot of kind of what you guys believe sitting here in the design and in the wood and everything. It really is beautiful. And that's what everybody's going to see is when they walk into your tap room, that's where they're making first impressions of kind of what's going on.
Totally.
Yeah. So you went to school for fine arts?
Yeah, and clearly I am not a sculptor nor painter at this point, although...
Different medium.
Yeah. You should see all the different sticky notes I have on my desk, though. There's scribbles all over them. But, keeping that creativity alive, that did play a role in our brewery. There is a creative aspect to making beer. It is science to a huge extent, of course. But after deciding that wasn't the route ultimately I wanted to go, I ended up bouncing around different industries. I worked construction for a period of time, worked in the food and beverage industries, server, bartender, etc. Worked for some wine distributors, and that really I think was the transition point into falling in love with beer, and specifically spontaneous beer was coming from more of a wine background.
Lovely. Where was it that you worked at in wine? Which I also think is great. My old brew mentor, Josh Watterson, he started in a winery, I forget where in southeastern Oregon. He was a Siebel grad, wanted to get into beer. Nobody was hiring, worked in wine, and then Bridgeport was like, hey, why don't you come on and you can brew with us.
Yeah. No, so I was living in Southern Oregon still at the time. I went to school down there in Ashland at Southern Oregon University, and working for a couple of distributors portfolios that represented that area, and then also working in sales, kind of and service, kind of de facto sommelier work. And that was when I made the jump into beer. The best wines, they have this beautiful sense of place, right? Or at least the wines that I love. Those couldn't be made somewhere else, or couldn't be made the same way somewhere else. They wouldn't be as good, as unique, as beautiful. They wouldn't have the same voice. And that's not something that I'd ever seen in beer until a friend opened a bottle of Driefonteinen Udeguze, and that had a voice. That said something about a place, right? It just that was the light bulb moment where clearly beer had more to say, or was capable of saying more than what I had given it credit for prior. And at that point, started deferring home brewing efforts towards making spontaneous ferments, wild ferments, and such, and seeing if there was a potential for harnessing that.
Yeah.
Did you homebrew before you had tasted that? So
No, that was
kinda,
after, yeah.
So you tasted, and then you're like, okay, I need to check this out.
This is worth exploring.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
But yeah, so like, that tie into this type of beer making came from a wine appreciation, a wine background. I think naturally, like there's a lot of similarity there, at least more so than there are for most styles of beer. Not to discount the quality of any individual other style.
Right. I think too, wine has such a rich and harmonious, like, time with their history. I mean, obviously they talk about terroir a lot. They talk about the process and making it a lot. And beer has, I feel, just as much weight and similar to that. But it is interesting to see that as beer has flowed throughout history, it has kind of died and then had resurgence and come back. But when it came back, and I want to say, you could say 80s and 90s, where breweries were picking like specific styles to be good at, like Pete's Wicked Brown Ale, Sierra Nevada, obviously with the Pale Ale, even like Dale's Ales up in the Everett, Seattle area, where they would choose to do stuff. I think a lot of that wasn't, people were not reminded, or there wasn't education to be taught about, like, oh no, this is stuff that has been here for a long time, like there's historical significance for that. And I think now it's become important because it's become a part of people's stories. Like, it's no longer just a brand. Like, the important significance of what you're representing and why you choose what you do to do, people pay attention and care for that now, I think, more than ever, which I think is just like, it bolsters and it's good for everybody to consider.
Yeah. I think I'm just thinking about, like, you homebrewing. I think we've talked to several people on the podcast that have done homebrew, and I think spontaneous fermentation is not something that they typically
you typically don't start out with that.
You typically don't start out with that. So how did you, like, what kind of research did you do? Were there people that you talked to? Like, how did you go about that?
Yeah, we didn't have the benefit that a lot of folks do right now. Like, the world of knowledge available about spontaneous fermentation was much more limited at the time when we were doing it on a home scale and looking at the potential eventually of opening up our brewery. So we read as much as we could, whether digital or paper, and just a lot of trial and error, trying to figure out what works. And like, one of the funny quirks is, like, you have this unique voice from different areas that's capable of coming through a spontaneously fermented beer, as I mentioned, just like wine. But you can't use the same process or recipe and harness the best of that character. So, like, even at the time we were looking at starting up, you could find and you could ask and get a rough template for, like, this is how you make Belgian lambic. The kind of, would say both pioneers, but the last remaining also folks making beer in this method at the time. That's not going to make the best beer where we're at.
Yeah.
Like, the proclivities of native yeast and bacteria in our area are going to be different, even if only mildly so, than what is in and around Brussels. So starting with Belgian lambic processes, traditions, ingredients, and such, and then making explorations from there and trying to figure out what the heck worked the best in the location we settled on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Austin and I talked about this a little bit before we, looked into some of the things, and, like, how much did the location of Tillamook bring to, like, knowing that this was a place that you needed to open a brewery? Like, what did that process look like when you started homebrewing to then getting to Tillamook and opening up a space? How did y'all land on Tillamook?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple and complicated. At the time, I was the assistant front of house manager at Pelican Brewing Company, at that point, Pelican Brewing, down in Pacific City. So really only a little under a half-hour drive from here. And looking at climate, and I believe that we needed a temperate environment. Higher temperatures for any sustained amount of time, like, you end up with a preponderance of bacteria in the air, kind of outweighing, or at least significant enough that you end up with something that is going to be either aggressively sour or off balance. So we targeted the northwest coast of the U.S. as a likely destination for this type of beer making, because temperate climate, in theory, year-round, although, like, we've found in the ensuing years, that is not always the case.
It's drastically changing.
Yeah.
Thank you, climate.
Yeah. So we pulled some fermentation trials, just taking sterile wort, exposing it to the air for approximately 3 hours in different locations, kind of up the Northwest coast. And I'm really grateful that ultimately we found close to home, what our home was at the time,
Nice.
was my favorite, and subsequent follow-up fermentation trials kind of like bore that out. Like, this is consistently good quality.
Yeah.
It clearly would have been more ideal if it had been in Pacific City where we were living at the time, but this was pretty close and pretty damn good.
Yeah.
From a strictly business standpoint, it would make a lot more sense to be in an urban market, like having a more built-in supply of customers, right? We don't have that out here.
Walkability.
Yeah, like foot traffic.
Totally. We're in a low population density area, city, county, and from a business standpoint, again, like that's not really your ideal, the cost of ingredients, because you can't grow most of the things we need on the coast here. They're coming from the valley. So even though they're Oregon, it still has to make its way out here. Like,
Yeah,
it comes with additional costs as well. But the goal of making the best damn beer we can make in this fashion kind of necessitates the location being the only concern, and you figure out the rest around that, right?
Yeah, very true. I do love that sort of balance between it, where you looked at what you were wanting to make the best product possible, and you looked at the atmosphere and environment around of like, where can I produce that? Whereas most people, even if they were not focusing on wanting to do spawn beer, would look at, like you said, like foot traffic, what makes sense from a business standpoint. And I think that's both bold and incredibly exciting, because the rewards can either pay off really well, or it can be a struggle for a really long time. And so I just say kudos to you on that. That was something.
It can be both.
Yeah, it could. It could still be both too. It could seem like it's going well, but that was something my mentor had told me, is that when he would pick ingredients and stuff, and he's out in Atlanta doing brewing operations for Elsewhere Brewing, but he uses a lot of craft malt from North Carolina Malt House that do great malt, and he gets really in touch with the people he buys ingredients from. And he said, I look at it as just like being a high-end chef. I want to get the best stuff possible. And he's like, I understand there's caveats, like hops, and especially hop market, and he buys off the spot market. He doesn't contract a ton of hops. He's like, you can only do so much to get exactly what you want. And he's like, but he said, I think it's a key that people have forgotten, that you are working with these delicate ingredients that do represent a lot of like what you are trying to make, but also represent a lot of what is around you and how you want that to play into what you're making.
Yeah. So like for you as a business owner, you found the place that worked best for that process that you needed. Then how did you go about finding the ingredients, and like what does that look like for you, of like strategy or your thought process of like what you want your business to be for those ingredients?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of stumbled our way into the very modest successes we've had. But, we had vineyard relationships. We use a lot of wine grapes in our beer. We make wine now as well, but we had prior relationships and sourced a lot of great ingredients through the vineyards. Working with hops, like that, just, asking, a lot of it was just asking people, like, what should we be getting? Like, who should we be working with here? Like, I was not a professional brewer prior to this. So there was a lot of like bare bones, like stuff that I had to lean on people and ask a lot of questions. You mentioned like, you don't make a great dish from crap ingredients. So we needed to figure out where to get good ingredients. And that took some time. It is kind of funny though, like speaking of good ingredients, like we contract with Crosby for our hops that we use, that we age for the majority of our beer. And so we get some ridiculous Oregon Cascade Willamette, like they're just so damn lovely. And then we break apart the bales with baseball bats and crowbars. And then we age them for at least 4 years, and like all of that goodness. Like these guys like spend the entire year trying to coax out of that land, and like that area, we just kind of destroy, which is sad and beautiful, I suppose. Like I like things like metamorphic, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, but like that butterfly is pretty fucked up afterwards.
Yeah, it's a beautiful transformation.
Yeah.
But it'll be good to know, if they happen to listen to this, that you do enjoy and appreciate that. Because sometimes, I mean, I've worked at places where we realized there's boxes of hops somehow got stuffed and stored away and nobody realized. And they're just like, oh, we're just going to throw these on top of the cooler and they're going to become aged hops for our cool ship now. So you actually have intent and purpose with that.
Yeah,
So they will appreciate
We have
that.
an offsite warehouse with thousands of pounds of their hops that are just slowly getting worse. Intentionally, of course.
Intentionally.
And thankfully, like I think
They're
that
changing.
there's quite a few of their team that are big fans of what we do, so I don't think they take any offense to it. Again, the sadness is mostly like these guys grow some really damn good hops, and we're just not really doing them justice. But
Yeah.
they're a farm we like to support because they do good work and because it's a local product or local-ish.
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
were.
So you definitely try to do as local, I'm assuming, as possible.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you are in Oregon, which helps a lot for
Yeah,
a lot of those
we
things.
only make a few really nominal exceptions to working local as far as ingredients. So we use a few bags of golden naked oats, so like a very light crystal oat malt that there's just not a domestic equivalent for, I think. So even though it's a nominal addition, we go through a ton of it. Like it's important for one of our recipes. Similarly, like I just love Nelson Sauvin hops, so we do use
Great.
those in
love that
a
hop too.
beer or two, and they're similarly there's just nothing like Nelson that's grown domestically. So I'll bend my ideals just a touch in that case.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like our fruit, our grain, our hops are all Northwest grown and sourced.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice.
I think one thing that, sorry,
No,
I
you
looked
go
at your
ahead.
best. I think one thing that I've learned a lot in coming into brewing, started off like keg washing, doing all the grungy work, is the meeting people in this industry is lovely. And also you see a lot of like, I feel like same values and part of the same aspirations in them. And I think that ties into business as well. Is that part of your process of how you look for people to, whether it's buying fruit or grain from? Is that something like you actively keep in your head, or is it just kind of whatever you're available to cost to buy is for?
No, cost is always going to be a consideration. Obviously, like, we're a business, and in years, what was it during the heat storms and fires we had?
Oh, yeah.
A couple years back, like our fruit farmers fared incredibly poorly, and because of that, what fruit they had to charge a super premium price for.
Yeah.
We bought less. Than we normally would have. Like confirming with them, like, are you okay with taking us taking less? And like, yeah, man, I can sell this on the open market for a lot more than I would charge you. Like, okay, well, great, do that.
As long as you're
because-
taken care of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You
Yeah.
square away. Like we value the relationships we have with our farmers, and we need to make sure that they're okay first and foremost if we ever need to make any changes. But no, we source and work with people that I think have good ideals.
Yeah.
Most of the farms that we work with are not certified organic or biodynamic because they're smaller farms, and oftentimes like the hurdle and the cost of going through that make that prohibitive. And I think to a T, every farmer we work with has told me something similar to the line of like, man, if it comes down to it, and like I have to use a pesticide or lose my entire year production, I'm going to spray.
Yeah.
Like my response is only like, I get that. Also, can you let me know if that happens?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me know so I can adjust as needed. Yeah.
Yeah, because for most small farms like around the country, not it's not isolated to the Northwest. The loss of an entire year's production is potentially catastrophic.
Yeah.
So, we don't label anything as organic or biodynamic, but we support farmers that not only grow amazing things but do it responsibly. I think.
Wonderful. Which I think is good. I think like good practice and business values has always been second to, and I understand running a business, you have to have it to be sustainable. You don't want to lose what you've created. But I think there does become a bridge and a gap where do people say that, but just do this because it's cheaper and easier? And this is coming from somebody who spent probably 7 years of all of my production and brewing background in bigger breweries, which I do love, but I saw a lot of the corporate side and a lot of the politicking where it was a lot of public appearances of saying one thing, but then behind the scenes doing the other just because fiscally it made sense, even if for the values and things you promoted, it didn't quite align.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I think that's awesome and super important.
I trust and believe in the folks that we work with. We wouldn't work with them otherwise. And we pay a premium for what they're doing because of that ethos. We could, for fruit, we could always work with like, like you can get processed fruit product hell, you can get extract. Like it's a heck of a lot cheaper and easier to work with. But that doesn't say anything. That's not beautiful. It's not capable of that, I think. Like you've manipulated all of the voice that had out of it during processing and in favor of expediency and convenience.
Yeah. I will say one of my favorite times at Freem is when we got to go with the brewers to do the nectarine sour we do, and all the peaches that you would have to cut and pit. Oh, people will never know the beauty. It looks great on social media when they get to take photos like, oh my gosh, look at these beautiful, but it is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and you probably had about like
sticky.
6 sticky.
You're like, I just have a sticky. There's just sticky memories.
And after a while, like your
processing.
palm is sore because the pits are digging into your hand, and that and like zesting too. I remember Matty Ice was like, "Come help me zest these grapefruits, man. This will be fun." And after about 3 hours, I was like, "This is what we do for this IPA." He's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Oh my god."
No, there are a few things like we kind of similar. Like we've worked with ginger a couple times. Where, your second or third hour of processing ginger is like not your favorite hour of the week.
Yeah.
No, stone fruit is a pain in the ass, admittedly. And if I had to cut one thing out of our production schedule, it'd be any stone fruit beer because it's terrible. It takes for freaking ever. From a cost standpoint, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I guess fortunately and unfortunately, there's a lot of demand from consumers for stone fruit wild ales. And they are capable of being beautiful, even if they are some of the most problematic during fermentation. Like the acids can swing wildly. So we keep doing it. And every year I say we're going to do less of it. And then every year that doesn't quite pan out.
Yeah.
Because the numbers change. Yeah.
Yeah, all the things. I think one thing, I know this is jumping around, but I think I just want to kind of hear, like, how did y'all decide on the name de Garde? Like, is there, like, a background for that for y'all? And how does that play into your business as it is today?
Yeah, multiple reasons behind the name. We want to give credit to the European brewing traditions that inspired us, and the real struggles that a lot of breweries went through to keep the operational and preserve those brewing styles and traditions. So drawing a European-inspired name makes a lot of sense. De Garde, to keep the whole, de garde, to protect, is referential to not just the maturation of beer in barrel over years during fermentation and aging, but also this type of brewing tradition, because it very nearly was lost as recently as 15 years ago or so. You had Belgian Lambic breweries dying off en masse, and you were down to just a handful. Really, I think only 3 brewers and a couple other blenders in addition.
Wow.
So it was important to reference that, but as well as the timeline and process of making the beer.
Yeah, and I know just from my research that a lot of your beers are not fast-turning beers. What is the I get it. Production, we would have beers that come out in 3 weeks, So what is the average time from, you could say from wort production, ferment to barrel to packaging?
You looking for the average?
How
about I give you a range?
Yeah, you can.
Right.
Better yet, thank you.
So,
give us a range.
The quickest turnaround base beers that we make are Bouveau and Premier. I guess Jose would be in that as well. Those are fermented and aged in barrel for a minimum of a year, and more often than not, we find ourselves north of 2 years.
Okay.
But let's just say 2 years there, and then if it goes through a secondary fruit fermentation, then you can tack on a few extra months, and then bottle conditioning for anywhere from sometimes, particularly for Jose, we try and turn that around quickly. So when it's ready, it's ready.
Yeah.
But at minimum, a couple months, and oftentimes a year or more in bottle afterwards. So and that goes from there a lot longer, where we have 6-7-year-old barrels here.
Wow.
And some of those are going to be components. Some will be isolated. Just if we have a really old barrel or a couple of them that have something to say, then that might be by itself. I think the oldest average age release we put out was somewhere around 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And then conditioning time. Oh, yeah, it's a multi-year process. I guess, unfortunately, from a business standpoint.
No,
but,
I
you
think
know.
it's lovely. I mean, brewers always talk about you let the beer tell you when it's done. So I think this is just a great example of that.
And that's really true. There are breweries making spontaneous beer that are more formulaic, including some that I have a ton of respect for, like our friend Pierre Tilken makes some of the most beautiful lambic and guza in the world. And I know he's not going to release anything before it's ready, but he has a minimum aging timeline in bottle and is a little bit more formulaic, I think, about his barrel selections and ages and the work he brings in for how it's constructed. It works for him. I think for us, letting the beer talk and, as you said, giving it the time makes a lot more sense. Maybe I'm just a shittier blender than him, though.
Kind of doubt that.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think your pedigree speaks for itself that you are not. But I also think it's good, too, to teach the demographic, and especially people that get excited about these beers, that just like seasons, patience is a good thing. You know, I think that's one of the favorite things I enjoy about beer is that there are seasons for beer. And so those things that come around in wintertime, you get excited for, and the things that come around in springtime. When you have that all-consuming all the time, I feel like it's similar to Anchor. When people heard Anchor was dying, everybody all of a sudden wanted steam beer. I remember specifically at Belmont Station, we were selling cases of it, and I always was just given the question, if Anchor all of a sudden gets bolstered up to still be here, will you continue to buy it at the rate? And a lot of people were like, oh, well, if I know it's going to be around. And I was like, oh, then like to me that was just interesting of, yeah, we live in a world today where it's a lot of instant gratification, and I think with beer it's nice to have these stops and breaks of, you know, this favorite thing that you have comes and goes, and that's beautiful. And like, let's have it be that.
Yeah, if only Anchor had the foresight to just close like every month. They'd still be operational.
Yeah.
But no, I hear you on that, and I am envious of breweries that as you mentioned, have like just a few week turnaround on beer. Like there is, from a business standpoint, again, like they're amazing. Jealous of that. But there's a beauty to what we do too, in the seasonality of it, and the patience when it pays off is so damn rewarding. And I think like that's not something that you get from making an IPA in a few weeks. When you put together a blend and it just like hits right? Like you smell that bottle when it's like conditioned, or you taste that final blend and like can picture where it's actually going to go. That is effing lovely. And it's one of the little joys that we get from this type of beer making.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
I would absolutely agree.
Is there like I'm assuming that there's a strategy for inspiration and what you're brewing next and what's up, and because it is such a long-term thing, like what does that look like, not only seasonally for the produce that you can get and the ingredients that you can get, but what does that kind of look like for what you're brewing now that you won't necessarily taste for a year or 2 years? What does it look like?
So we usually look at consumer demand first and foremost, and then we do the exact opposite.
So you take the information and you're like, good.
We're
And
going
then
to throw that out the window.
No, I'm joking. Like, if we were looking to run this business as a money-making endeavor, it's like obviously we have to make money. We need to pay ourselves. We need to pay our team. If we were looking to run this in the most lucrative way possible, we would plan based on what people wanted. One, we don't really have that capability because we can't shift on the fly. It takes years.
Yeah.
So looking forward, like we look at ingredients, we talk with our farmers, particularly for fruit beer, of course, and make sure that we can get the raw ingredients that we need to do certain things. And then we look at what has been successful for us. And then we sometimes just kind of throw caution to the wind and come up with some really weird ideas. And, okay, so you guys met Matt, Matt, our lead brewer, who's been with us for, 7 years, I think a little over.
congrats.
Yeah, dude, we are so lucky to have him. He is invaluable. But for his 5th year anniversary, I think it was, he likes imperial stouts more than I do, like the modern style and such. And that's cool.
There's nothing wrong. Sorry,
No,
I'm not laughing at you, Matt.
I'm not opposed to them either. But for his like 5th-year anniversary working with us, like, well, let's try and make something that Matt will enjoy that is not what he works with every other damn day. So I tried to like coax a recipe out that is relevant to the experience of drinking a, you know, Russian Imperial Stout. You know, something that's, you know, 13, 14, you know, the modern, or like the huge version that we currently have with a bunch of barrel character too. And we came up with our Minuit recipe, which is wildly different than anything else we make because it's not fermented to complete dryness. Wild yeast won't take it that far. And like trying to make it less fermentable by both a crazy long boil, a lot of adjunct grains. And so we came up with that recipe. And it was the most expensive beer we've ever made, both in process, I think also at release price, other than some of the collaborations we've done. Thankfully, it turned out, so we didn't just flush a bunch of money down the drain. But like, you know, like sometimes you just have to go on a whim and do something that excites you. Like that this whole brewery is built around that mindset of like, we're doing this because we think it's worth doing or worth trying to do.
Yeah.
So we still take that attitude in every so often to some fun experimentations and in our decision-making process about what we're going to make.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I can only imagine, like, I think about just like the time that you've said that it takes like to have an idea and then have it come to fruition down the road that long. I think a lot of people today would struggle with that. So the fact that you and the team have found a way to make that work is pretty incredible. So.
It's gotten easier over time. Like you look at the timeline of aging barrels, and we started out and we only had, you know, a few dozen barrels. Waiting on any individual one was painful because we didn't have a lot of beer available. As we've grown and as we've reached capacity, which we've been operating at since 2017.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you, I think.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah, no, really.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
I think, yeah.
You know, as we've reached that capacity, there's kind of a steady pipeline now. So the patience is easier. Like you're still waiting on any individual barrel, but you always have barrels ready, right? So less painful at this point. You still have like sometimes you find something that you know is going to be great though for like looking to compose a blend. And well, this barrel, this component is not exactly where we want it to be, but hot damn, that's going to be
That's going to be good.
rocking in another like 2 years. Like that then gets you back to like where we started. I'm like, I'm gonna wait on you, but man, I'm not gonna do it easily.
Yeah.
So patience is something that you know very, very well, I'm sure. Yeah.
No.
Or try.
You're like, it's the
I
thing
practice.
That,
It's
yeah,
necessity.
You practice. It's necessity.
Yeah.
Every
yes,
single
necessity.
day.
You're like, I don't love it, but it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and like the same thing. Like when we package something, when we bottle something off, you know, it's naturally re-fermented in bottle, and that's where a lot of the beauty from the beer happens. Sometimes you get that glimpse, you know, at like a couple weeks into bottle conditioning, we're like, oh, you are going to be lovely. You just need more time, and sometimes that, you know, we release things not on a schedule, as I kind of mentioned. It's not like, okay, bottle 12 months later or 6 months later, now it's ready.
Yeah.
Our goal is like, if I don't see any near-term upside potential, is it going to be better in 3 months? Then we'll wait. Obviously, if there's off character, then it's not ready.
Yeah.
So sometimes like that timeline just keeps extending. Like, so you try it and then come back a month or 2 or 3 later and like, nope, you're still improving, and I can see more complexity in your future. It's like, all right, we'll check back in 1 or 2 or 3 months. And it goes and goes and goes.
Yeah. Well, I do love it's a hard duality of having patience but also recognizing when something may or may not be getting better and having to dump it. I remember this washing kegs at Seven Seas. It was always touted by our brewmaster Travis Scooterson of being like, you need to be able to, you know, call it quits and call the line when something just hasn't worked out. Yep. You know, he's like, yeah, it stinks, but if that product is representing not only your brand but what your vision was, and it's not aligned with that or correct, you need to be able to sit there and kind of take the loss and be like, yeah, do better next time. I'm not asking for how many times you dump, but is that something that I feel, are you guys okay with doing that throughout your process?
Yeah, we dump out a lot of beer, and we wait on a lot. There are certain things that are irreconcilable. Like off characteristics that when they're bad, they're just bad. Like if we have something that is above threshold acetic acid, that is not going to be a usable component. That's not going to like come back around, right? It's just going to get worse. So that gets dumped out. We have a particular character that I still have not been able to suss like what the compounds are, and I have not seen in other beer that happens on rare occasion. We just call it the. It has.
You have your own name for it?
No, it has the flavor.
Okay.
And it's not like a definable off characteristic that I can find. It's just like not pleasant.
Yeah.
And those never come back around. Usually it's from older barrels, so surely it's some oxidative reaction. But anyway, we dump less than we used to. We were at one point, I think, close to like 15 or maybe even 20%. Now it's maybe 5 to 7.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at numbers for the last year now that we've finished it up, but that would be my ballpark estimate. But we also do have some packaging runs where things like, didn't go as anticipated in bottle. And so I'm willing to wait that out because there's not any of those unreconcilable flaws.
Yeah.
But they're not right. And I see some potential for that.
Yeah.
But like aggressive acidity too is another one. Like you get too much acid, of course, particularly in bottle, that if it's not palatable. And like my litmus is like, would I sit and drink a bottle of this over an evening, over dinner, whatever, to myself, which is a possibility for a lot of our beers because like a lot of them are like that 5-6%, right? You're not overindulging. If that's not a possibility, or that would be too much or like too unpleasant after that second glass or first glass or something, like, well, that's not a beer that I really want to put out in the world because that drinking experience isn't going to be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has pissed off some customers. Like we used to, I think, for a lot of our beers, or on average, have a lower pH, more titratable acidity, and we've alienated some of that original customer base just by pursuit of like a more balanced acid profile. Like we have had complaints, and like, man, like acid's easy to make in beer, man, and like there's nothing beautiful about it. Unless you're cooking with it, of course, like that's a great component.
Yeah, like emulsifier and things like that.
And I think similarly in cooking, like you use vinegar to garnish, to season. You're not drinking it. Like, beer shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely spent time around those. My time at Seven Seas, we would bottle share, and we got a lot of DeGarde at Pint Defiance, which is kind of where I got my intro into craft beer. But I remember plenty of old friends still in Tacoma that were like, yeah, I love DeGarde when it was just kind of like rip the enamel off your teeth type of acidity, but here's the thing is like, to me, that wasn't a bad thing because my intro to sour beer was through DeGarde, but also E9. And at first it was really interesting because I didn't know how to profile in my Rolodex of like flavor and aroma and also like acidity and sensation where that lied. And then after about a year or two, I was able to kind of, for my own personal self, be like, okay, I feel like this is too acidic. I may not want to drink this. And that's not saying you nor E9, but like having variety of that, where some people, I think they just almost like love the challenge of something that was going to cause them to have like 6 Tums right afterwards. It was like, yes, this is what sour beer should be. So
I don't know if it's age or something, but like, as I have gotten older and been doing this, like I err towards more understated, which it's weird that it took some time to get there because that's what I always wanted in wine. Like you can have a broad shoulder, like a large scaled wine with bolder flavors, but it's best when there's a lot of undercurrent, like the beauty is in the subtlety of it. So moving away from aggressive, bold character in our beer, I think, is a direction I'd like to go. Like we still do a lot of fruit beer, and most of them use a massive amount of fruit. But that's not where the beauty is. It's all the things that happen behind the scenes. And to get complexity, to have the ability to appreciate the nuance and like fine details of that, means that you can't have one ingredient, whether that's acid or anything else. Like you can't have that just bludgeoning your palate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all I can hear is definitely just like the you producing art when you were younger, and this is, like we said, a different medium. Like I know you said it was hard to find that thread, but I think for myself, like I see that thread very like hardworking on the fishing boats, and then like your appreciation for art and what it takes to make a piece and different things. And then now, like I think I see that thread as an outsider. I don't know if that is something for you, but I don't know. I think I see it of understanding it takes so much time and effort for you to create something and to then put it out, and the appreciation and time that it takes. I think I see
Sure.
that. I see that thread.
That perspective makes some sense to me too.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. Like you
Yeah.
learn the hard work, but you also learn the patience and the creativity and the beauty.
My mom always said, whatever you do now prepares you for what's next. And I think the things that got you to here, I see the building blocks for that. And
Well, yeah, I think for all of us though, right? Like
Yeah.
your trajectory is built upon like where you were.
yeah,
So clearly, like if any of the major life points for me or my wife had been different, then we likely wouldn't have this brewery, or the brewery would not be the same.
yeah, definitely, for sure.
Well, I think one thing to kind of bounce off that, and it ties into with like the patience and slowness that y'all create and do here, not only how the business has grown, but we briefly talked about before we started, kind of like past employees and the rapport that Garde has built. My question maybe is that, I'd say like personal, but a value that you want to have is that the people that come into your company and facility that work for you, you want it to be very, very reflective of kind of like how you wish things to be in a business world. Working in, again, I have so much big production corporation experience with brewing, and I think that's something where we always talk about the passion and what we wish for people to do. But then again, sometimes those goals don't meet up just for what the company and where they want to go. And to me, I think that's something that does get lost in this industry, is that this was started by hardworking, creative, passionate people, and it takes a lot of guts to really stand by that and also put it into your employees as well. I know that seems a little long-winded, but I mean, is that something that you focus on, is with employees that come in, the values and kind of things you want to maybe impress upon them for the future?
I'm still trying to digest the total question there.
That's okay. Sorry, yeah. Sometimes I tend to, I'm trying to put my words together. I probably should just take a breath and then formulate instead of just talking.
You've been listening to me do the same thing, so
Yeah.
we're good. I think in regards to our team, the folks that work with us, that choose to, that bless us with their contributions, we always want to do better and be better than what we've seen or what is the norm. There's a lot of passion in the brewing industry. That's why most people find their way into it. It's surely not an economic incentive, because the pay is garbage, whether you're an owner or you're an employee. So that passion is usually under-rewarded. Our goal for our team is to, one, we try and hire people that have a similar level of passion that we do. Because you can't train that. We've never had prerequisites for brewing experience or education, because I can work with someone and say, like, this is how I think it works best for us to make beer. And, like, please tell me when I'm wrong. If you think that there's a better way to do something, we always make minor tweaks. But this is the way I can do it. I can teach that. I can't teach somebody to give a fuck about making this or to care.
Yeah.
That's not a teachable thing. So if we're going to expect people to come in here and be passionate about this and to maintain that level of excitement and interest, like that invaluable quality, like that helps make good beer, not just like being it's an industrial job. But that's not what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
If we expect people to carry that excitement, then we need to be able to compensate them and take care of them in a way beyond just having it be an industrial job and beyond like the typical brewery wage. And we've done a mediocre job. I give us a lot of credit because I know that we pay better than any breweries that I'm aware of for similar positions. It's still not amazing, but our top 8 employees are in line with my wife and I.
Yeah.
We offer pretty great benefits, and we have very real open conversations with our team about, like, here's here's what we're selling, here's what we're making, here's what our costs are. Here's like this is why your bonus is only this much this year. This is why your pay raise is only this much this year.
Sounds like you guys have good transparency.
We try to be like I don't expect to do well if my team isn't doing well. Unfortunately, like we've reached a cap on kind of where we can take care of our team. And one of the goals for actually purchasing this older building, where our brewery currently resides, our tap room and such, was that when we were leasing a space, you have that cost per month, right? That's always going out. If you purchase it, renovate it, you still have some costs once you've paid off that debt, but it's going to be a much less per month. That allows us to reinvest in our business and team to a greater extent. So we've made the leap that we never really anticipated in actually purchasing and renovating an old property.
Yeah.
With one of the big driving factors and interests being to better support our people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that as an semi-outsider for the beer industry, I don't see some of those qualities in owners and people who are running businesses. Like, I know that Austin and I talk about there's a lot of passionate people that come into the beer industry and then are led away because they're not able to be sustained. And so I think...
Well, you look at the creativity, like the growth in the industry over the last decade, 15, 20 years, has been fueled by passionate people getting into it. And like there's this massive attrition rate now, I think, or people that are burning out because you can only work so hard for so long if you're barely making a living wage or less than.
Yeah.
But like I can't knock any other breweries because I don't think any of the ownership or brewery owners are doing particularly fantastic right now. So when you look at substandard wages and such, like I don't know how you fix that other than beer prices going up, and at that point you're just going to sell less beer.
Yeah.
So it's a weird catch-22. Like, you can't pay more, can't charge more.
Yeah, definitely a hard time for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's always been a constant problem too, is that balance between both like what you can offer to the public to like sell at a certain price and have a good time, and then what's the return on employees. I mean, I started in 2015, and I think I talk to Julie about this all the time that I knew of Siebel and some brewing schools, but a lot of it was like trade job, learn on the job, and eventually you invest and stay loyal to a company. You will eventually kind of get your payback, whether it's in like an employee stock option or other things like that. And to me, that was important because it went along with line of my values of being like, my dad taught me, you work hard and you show somebody good quality work for a long period of time, their payouts. And he just put it the way as like, that's just how humans should be. He's like, somebody that works for me really hard, I don't want to just have them work at this high level for a long period of time. And then whether they want to quit or go somewhere else, I don't have a way to say thank you, or I don't want them to feel like they've been unnoticed for 10 plus years. And so I think that's something that, for my personal opinion, I think there's people in the brew industry that could be better about it. And there's also a ton of other issues where people could be better in the brew industry. But I think that's one that is commonly used of being like, yeah, you're going to learn a lot of great skills, and this is passionate, creative, and great. But then it's kind of ambiguous to where the cap is or where that ends or what the reward is. And then that's how you get burnout. And you talked about the attrition rate. There's a lot of people, especially after COVID, that no longer work in this industry because I feel similar effects.
But I don't think that's necessarily like, unique to our industry. I think that's pretty broad.
True.
But no, nobody, ourselves included, needs to be commended for doing what, as you kind of mentioned, is the right thing to do, and that's taking care of your employees the best capability that you have. That is the right thing to do, but that's just what should happen. That's not something to like throw backpats or hugs around about. That's just that's what you should do. So certainly, some businesses, not unique to our industry, but somewhat prevalent, could maybe do better. But even from just a business standpoint, treating your employees poorly or undercompensating or paying the lowest wage that you possibly can costs your business. Like there's a qualitative outcome from that where you're going to see substandard work and potentially substandard product because of that. Again, you should pay your team well because you care about them and because it's the right thing to do.
True.
But again, from a business standpoint, like you're going to get less good work if you don't show your team that you care.
Definitely.
If you don't care for your people. And then there's also a cost aspect. Like if you don't care for your team well, you're going to have turnover. People will leave if you suck. It turns out, whether that's in business or relationships and stuff, right?
Yeah,
that
definitely.
comes at a cost. And for a business, like having to retrain somebody else to fill a position because you're an asshole, that costs you money too.
Yeah.
No,
Like
definitely.
it's short-sighted to say like I'm going to pay the least amount of money to fill this like cog. That you're going to fill it again, and you're going to pay more money per hour of productive work. And like, I hardly profess to be a great business person. Clearly, look at our business, but sometimes I think like people just don't look at the end game, the long term, like what their values could be, should be, and how that actually benefits a healthy, thriving business.
Yeah, and Austin and I talk about it a lot because I've worked only in 2 breweries. Like I do a lot of other jobs, and so it's just like I do see that in other industries. It's not just the brewery industry, but like I think it is for Austin and I. Like whenever I know he got into brewery separate than me, but I think the passion that we have, the community that we love, that we want to see continue to grow, like that's a big reason why we wanted to start the podcast. We wanted to be able to go from brewery to brewery and like find passionate people who love what they do and love their community, love their business, love their employees and their product, and be able to share that not only with those breweries from place to place, but also with other people. Like I think about the people in the Tillamook area and then outside of that, you know, being able to share the passion that you have for your business and know that it's I think it's great to hear. Like I don't get to hear that from a lot of my employers in the past, and so I think it's inspiring for Austin and I, and for myself specifically, to hear people who are trying and wanting to help spread that word and like share that with other people, because it is lacking in a lot of places. So it's a huge reason why we wanted to have this podcast, so people could hear when people are trying.
We like giving people their flowers. And I definitely know people in this industry, a lot of these people are introverted. They're so obsessed with their work that, you know, sometimes they aren't comfortable with it. But that's why it's like, yeah, I want to be able to talk to you and show the people like, oh, yeah, this is so from this place, and this is what they do and what they create and inspire. And people love and enjoy it. So if I can give them like a little glimpse, or we can, to me, that's like all the love and passion in the world. I think that's awesome.
Oh, very cool. I am clearly not that comfortable in front of a microphone or people.
Hey, I think you're doing great.
Yeah, you're actually nailing it.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, but it's okay because this is right around the time where we tend to wind down, and this is where we give the floor to you about talking about. Do you have any fun projects or anything else you want to share with people about things that DeGarde or yourself have doing or coming up?
Well, this is like one of the things that like people is going to excite other people. It has been the kind of frugal and pragmatic one through this entire adventure of ours, and discourage my worst inclinations, which is like most brewers, a shiny new piece of equipment or a new fermentation vessel. Like I'm going to spend that money. And of course, she most of the time responsibly said, "No, man, no." So we built up a pretty good cash reserve just in case things went haywire, which they did, and like holy fuck, we did not have enough. But we went through just by keeping our team on for 3 years while we were losing money. Like we spent out over $250,000 just trying to make sure that things were as they were.
And you're still here. I think
Barely, man.
But I think
it's a testament to DeGarde and your values.
We've seen so many things come through of breweries closing.
Yeah.
It's like you still being able to be here and to employ people. I think that is a celebration
So
point.
that's like the loan payoff. We just finished paying that down at the end of December, and that was $17,000 a month.
Amazing. That's
So
amazing.
like that kind of was just like, oh fuck, like okay, we can exhale a little bit. Like we're still in like a shit position because every brewery is, I think, right now, but there's an upward trajectory, and you can kind of see it now. So exciting.
Yeah, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I think super impressive. And
Yeah.
I think too.
I think even for like not a business, but even an individual, like being able to pay off a loan, a debt, in this economy and the things after COVID, like
I drank so much wine when I paid off my student loan.
to ease the pain. Yeah.
To celebrate.
Oh, there you go. A little
yeah, no,
nibble.
to celebrate for sure.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, like, damn it, I finally got rid of you. It turns out I didn't use you anyway.
you may not have used it in the sense that you thought you were going to.
Yeah.
Well,
Different
yeah,
aspect.
we covered like, every
Yeah.
step is on a path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Trevor, thank you for sitting down and talking with us today. If you want to share anything about fun stuff you guys are doing, or collaborations, projects, or even if you're just like, yeah, just please come visit us, see the fun stuff that we're doing down here. The little bit of time left is yours.
Well, I mean, I would always encourage people to come out here and see what we're up to. Like we have, our beer makes it out into distribution in certain areas, and that's delightful. Like one of our goals is to make our stuff approachable, as approachable in price as we possibly can, even though it's expensive as heck to produce, and the timelines make that even more so. But we offer a lot more here, both on draft and in bottles, and you get a sense of the environment that makes the beer. So yeah, please come out, check us out. But as far as other exciting things, like we talked about this a bit earlier, I get excited about the things that are so unexciting. It's, like this is always a process in making the beer, and like the little steps are what make it what it is. And so like I get excited about the details and like trying to do just like that incremental amount better every time, every year, every blend, every batch. That to me is like beautifully exciting, but it's also dull as hell if you're not a part of like the process and like haven't seen it evolve over years. But I can't remember the winemaker that said it. Like there's always only one right choice, and I don't think that's exclusive to making wine or making beer. Like every single little step in a process, there is one right choice, and those string together like pearls on a necklace or beads, and you end up with something in the end that's beautiful if you've made the right step, the right choice for every single little bead along the way.
That's a lovely way to put that. I like that.
I'm not taking credit for it, man. You know what? I think it was Maggie Harrison,
Okay.
a winemaker in the Willamette Valley here.
Okay.
The absolutely beautiful analogy, I think, to the process. And like I get obsessive and see so much excitement and beauty in all those little beads, like that step. But in like real tangible things that like aren't dull as hell for everybody else. Other cool things. We're making wine now, which is not something that is broadly recognized, I think. And that's kind of bringing it all back around home. Like I mentioned to you before we started talking, the microphones here, that our background was wine before beer found its way into our heart. We finally had enough access to some grapes that like were truly exciting, that had a real voice, similar to the way that we found a voice in this type of beer in this location. So we finally started making some, and we're on our second or third year of releases of those. And I don't think most folks know that, but it's really damn good. And I find it exciting.
That's exciting.
as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Do you, I don't know if you guys are with Day One. Are you able to talk about who might be able to buy your wine from you if you distribute it? If you're not able to talk about that too, that's totally fine.
Yeah. For distribution, in Oregon, we work with Block 15.
Oh, okay.
So the brewery, but they also have a distribution arm, and they cover Oregon for us. They have been doing Washington. We're actually currently working on transitioning to a different distributor up there. So if you're in Washington, TBD as far as where that's going to go.
Perfect.
But
Yeah,
we
look
should
for
actually have more
announcements.
access, and in addition, like likely sending some wine up that way. In California, we're with Lime Ventures, and if you're somewhere else in the country or world, then like reach out to your local distributor. We occasionally do sporadic shipments internationally and to other states.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you for spending time with us and
thank you
sharing
so
your
much.
story. Stoked
You've
to
been
see you
very
with the Garde.
inspiring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your time.
Shucks. Thanks for taking the time and thinking that anybody might want to actually hear from me.
No. And next time we come around, when we're doing like our 103rd episode, because you're our third episode, we'll get Matt, we'll get Lindsay on. We can let you take a break from the interviewing.
Yeah,
No,
definitely.
they're more likable than I am. Yeah.
Oh, hard to beat.
Well, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.